And there's, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. Committee members who are electrically present at this meeting are Bill McLaughlin, Sue Friedman, Tony Pagnuccio, Virginia Newton, and we have Jimmy?
No,
not yet.
Not
He's
yet.
not.
Okay. Okay. These are the opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted in the Albemarle calendar. Please note that chat is disabled. If you send something in the chat, this is sent to the meeting administrator. To ask a question or share a comment, please use the raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak. County staff here is, let me see, got Bill Fritz. Anyone else from county staff?
Carolyn.
Yeah.
Carolyn Schaefer. Okay.
Not staff, but supervisor liaison.
Okay. Okay. B Kirkley is here. I thought we had
We have a new member.
supervisor. No, I misunderstood about that. I thought David Mitchell was in there, but I somehow or another I was mistaken.
Okay.
And Ned Galloway seems to be here also. Okay.
This is David Mitchell. I am here.
Oh, David Mitchell is here. Okay. Oh, David Gregory Mitchell. Fine. Thanks, Dave. Okay. We're going to adopt the meeting, the minutes from the meeting in January. I think these were sent out twice. Does anybody have any changes they'd like to make in the meeting? Anybody on the CAC?
No.
Oh, okay, all in favor of approving, say aye.
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 Okay, minutes are approved. Before we go to the North Fork presentation, I just want to give everyone a short update on recruiting. Sue and I, mainly Sue, have done have had a lot of success with recruiting. I think we're going to wind up in the end right now with people that have either applied or said they're going to apply with about 12 people. And that includes representatives of the development community, real estate, the business community, and I think we're going to get somebody representing or speaking for the airport. So it looks like we'll go from a committee that had fewer members than it should to one that is almost full. Okay. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Bill Fritz, who will manage the presentation on the North Fork application for county. So go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Just to introduce myself, I'm Bill Fritz. I work in the Community Development Department, and I am the lead reviewer for the North Fork rezoning project. And just in case anybody wants to jot this down, I'll share it also later. But if you need to email me or want to email me to get information or to get on an email distribution list, my email is bfritz@albemarle.org. And if you send me an email, I will make sure that you are kept up to date with any information on this particular project. I have a brief presentation to share with you just to sort of outline how rezonings work in Albemarle County. I see there are a lot of people here who are not on the not on the CAC, so I'll go through that just to make sure everybody has an overview of the process, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant so that they can provide detailed information about the particular project. The goal is that we want to hear the comments from the public so that we can share those comments with the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors when they hold their public hearings. Staff and the applicant also use that information to help during the review process and to define or refine the proposal. So it's important to hear those comments. So I'm just going to do a brief sharing here. And there we go. And you should be able to see my screen. Can you see my the PowerPoint presentation? Great.
Yes.
Great. There we go. So this is I didn't put the number in there. It's 2021-15. I don't know why I missed that, but it's a North Fork UVA Discovery Park rezoning application. As I said, the purpose of this meeting is to share information about what the project is, where it is, and some basic information about how Albemarle County regulations work and the process, and to get input from the public on the particular project so we can share that. So very quickly, how does development happen in Albemarle County? Well, there's various application types. We are all the way at the left on this particular application. We're at the zoning map amendment stage. If this zoning map amendment is successful, and that requires an action by the Board of Supervisors, there will then be additional reviews that occur for the site plans and subdivisions, water protection, architectural review, building permits. There's a variety of those things. And during those reviews, there are very detailed plans that are required by the various codes and regulations. And then ultimately there's a zoning clearance. You build everything, you get a zoning clearance to operate. And then there's ongoing monitoring and enforcement to make sure that the buildings are being used the way the ordinance allows, and stormwater facilities are being maintained and the like. So we're all the way at the left on this particular application at the very beginning. We provide this just to show you the process, and there's no, I can share this with anybody, but that's where we are in the process. We're at the very early stages of this. There are a lot of much more detailed things that'll be coming at a later date. And I can share this particular flow chart with you, but the real idea here is just to show you how early we are in the review process. So what is zoning? Zoning is what you can do with your property today. And the county is divided up into a variety of different zoning districts. Each property has at least one zoning designation, except for just a very few that are around UVA. And a few properties actually have multiple zoning designations. There's nothing that says a property has to have just one zoning. So every property is zoned differently. Residential, industrial, commercial, mixed developments, a wide variety of zoning types. As I said, that tells you what you can do today. There's also the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan looks forward at 20 years into the future. Where are we going as a community? It does reflect some things that have happened, but it also shows things that are going to happen. Development areas also have master plans, and they contain the future land use recommendations for every property in the county. The zoning map and the future land designations don't always match up. There are differences. Property may be shown as industrial in the comprehensive plan, but may still be zoned residentially. That means it can be used residentially right now until a rezoning application is approved. So zoning, land use, they don't match perfectly. There are various types of applications. We're at the rezoning stage. There are some special use permit regulations also. I'm going to focus on the rezoning application here. And this is a legislative review. And what that means is that The Board of Supervisors will be the one that has to approve it. There are, the ordinance also requires that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing. They will take a vote. That vote is a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. This process that we're going through right now is called a legislative review. The difference is there are ministerial reviews and legislative reviews. Legislative reviews are discretionary. The board could approve, the board could deny. Ministerial reviews are not discretionary. If the application meets the requirements of the ordinance, it must be approved. If the application does not meet the minimum ordinance requirements, it must be denied. There's no discretion there. Legislative applications are reviewed by a wide variety of people. This has been sent out. This particular application has been sent to a lot of different people. We're talking VDOT, Albemarle County Service Authority, Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority. We also get various departments and agencies within the county to review. So we have engineering review, we have Parks and Rec looking at this, we involve the schools. So we have a lot of different people who are looking at this. And then of course, the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. Rezoning applications are reviewed for a wide variety of things, including the area's future land use designation, the comprehensive plan. And we also look at both the state and our own zoning ordinance have criteria that we need to review. And if you go to the zoning ordinance, you can actually see that criteria, and every rezoning application is reviewed against that criteria. And this application will be doing that. And that includes things like, it includes public welfare, public health, safety, and a variety of things. The ARB is also involved in this review. They're one of the internal reviewing agencies because this property is located in an entrance corridor district. So what do we have now for this property? This is the existing zoning for the property. I didn't include the zoning map because it just shows one color. But where we are now is this property, you can see it outlined there, is all zone PDIP. The area to the left there, which has sort of a greenish color, greenish pinkish color, that area was rezoned more recently in the Planned Development Industrial Park. And it actually has an application plan associated with it that shows a fair amount of detail about building locations and parking, access, some things like that. And that's called an application plan. The northern part of the property, the right-hand side, this property is oriented with north at the right, west at the top. That part of the property is the original Planned Development Industrial Park, and it does not have a detailed application plan associated with it. It has this, what we commonly refer to as a bubble plan. It has these blocks that show development is going to occur here, and generally this is the type of development that's going to occur in the area. It shows the approximate road alignment, things like that, but it doesn't say the building will be here and the building will be this size. It does not have that level of detail. The left-hand side does have more of that detail. It's not exact, but it is more detailed. So what is being proposed here is the applicant is proposing to rezone the southern portion of the property, and that's highlighted in the non-blue portion here. And that portion is being proposed to be amended to NMD, which is Neighborhood Model District. That district has the widest variety of uses of all the districts that we have. And in that particular portion of the property or project is made up of multiple properties. They are proposing to be allowed to do residential development and some commercial and some office and some retail. So that's what's proposed in that western or that southern portion, excuse me. And I'm going to let the applicant really get into the detail there. They have provided an application plan for that portion of the property, and you can see here where this is very typical of an application plan. It shows the rough layout of where buildings are going to go. The different colors mean different things, commercial office, residential, single family, multifamily, things like that. And what you see to the right there in those blue, those are buildings that actually physically exist within the North Fork projects. It's sort of highlighting them. So, and this is part of the application plan that the applicant has submitted. This is all being reviewed against the comprehensive plan. This is the comprehensive plan. And this particular property has a lot of different land uses recommended on it. At the southern end, it has urban mixed use. Most of it, which is that purplish color, is office R&D Flex LI. The name of it includes a lot of different things. It also has some institutional use. That's the fire station. And it has both public and private open space. And that's the greenish spaces, the bright green and sort of the olive green spaces. So you can see that there's a wide variety of land use recommendations for this particular property. I'm going to end my presentation here and turn it over to the applicant. I wanted to put this up on the screen so anyone who's viewing this right now can write this address down. I'll share it again later. But if you send me an email, I will create an email distribution list. And anytime we prepare comments to send to the applicant, I will share those with you also. And anytime the applicant submits information, new information, I can share that with you also. And I can also send you an email to keep you updated on planning commission dates and board dates, so you can be aware of those. Just so you know, the applicant sent a notice out for this meeting. That notice goes to a very wide group of people. It goes to the general area. The notice that we'll send for the planning commission meeting only goes to the abutting property owners. So only those who are immediately adjacent and touch the property that's proposed for rezoning will get notice of the planning commission. There is no notice given for the Board of Supervisors meeting other than the notice that's provided in the newspaper. So if you're not an abutting property owner, or even if you are an abutting property owner and you want to be kept up to speed on those dates, if you send me an email, I'll do my best to email you to let you know what those dates are. And that's really all the presentation I have at this time. If you don't mind, I'd like to hold off on any questions you might have other than technical questions about process, and turn this over to the applicant, let them make their presentation, and then we can try to answer any questions if that's all right with the chair. Yes.
Yeah, quick question regarding abutting properties. Since this is on the border of 29, will you notify any properties on the east side of 29? Would that be considered abutting or not, because 29 is in the middle?
We treat roads and rivers as if they were property lines, and we go across them. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Valerie Long. I am with the law firm of Williams Mullen, and we're working with the UVA Foundation on this application. I'll do a quick introduction of our team. We tried to get as many people here as possible to make sure we had all possible questions covered. We have a few additional folks who are in the public audience, but let me start first with the representatives of the UVA Foundation who are here. We have Fred Missel, who is the Director of Design and Research Parks and Development, and Deborah Van Ursel, who many of you also know works with North Fork all the time, the guru. And Chris Schooley, who is the project manager for the application. We also have two representatives of Timmins Group, civil engineers, Craig Kotarski and also Thomas Ruff. Thomas is a traffic engineer who's prepared the traffic study, so we'll direct any traffic specific questions to him. And my colleague Megan Nadostup is also with us. She's a planner with our firm. I think I got everyone. I hope I didn't miss anyone. It's great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share this proposal with all of you, and we look forward to answering your questions. Bill provided such a comprehensive overview of everything, so a lot of the slides that you'll see on our presentation are very similar, so we can skip through those as needed. But I think Bill and I probably think a lot alike in terms of how to explain these proposals. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. right. Can you all see my correct screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Super. So you all know this area pretty well, but just to highlight it a little bit, this is a slightly different orientation than Bill had it. Obviously, it gives you a feel for the size of the park. Now called, I keep calling it the Research Park because out of habit, but it's now North Fork, a UVA Discovery Park.
Hey, Valerie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just a heads up, we're looking at your PowerPoint with all the slides on the left, not the presentation.
You know, I practiced this before I started and it was working correctly. Let me try again here.
Happens to me all the time.
I'm going to start with this. Well, okay. How is that? Does that look right? Thank you, Fred. I
Perfect.
appreciate it. When I have 3 monitors, it sometimes looks like it's right and then it turns out not to be. So thank you. Pardon me, everyone. All right, so everyone knows the boundaries. This is another version of the slide that Bill showed earlier. This is a very close up of the Places29 master plan, which I know many of you on the committee are very, very familiar with, and obviously the supervisors as well. We tried to identify a little bit, put a boundary around the park. There's so many different colors that are already being used in this map. So the blue area outlines the boundaries of North Fork. And as Bill indicated, there's a number of different colors. The purple color is the designation for, it's a combination of research park, light industrial, office, light industrial, flex space, and research. The green, sort of olive green colors are open space. The brighter green is a park area. That's part of a proffered park from the original rezoning. And then down here, there's some mixed use area as well as institutional, which represents where the fire station is located. One thing we also wanted to point out, which we thought was very helpful, was in the Places29 master plan in the top corner, we have a quote we've pulled from the master plan. Even though the research park, North Fork does not currently permit residential, which is why we're here. It was clearly contemplated back with the Places29 master plan when that was adopted about 10 years ago. It specifically talked about, you know, a more integrated amount of residential and commercial uses. A lot of you, including myself, were probably not around when North Fork was originally approved back in, I think it was submitted in 1995, but it was approved in 1996. This is the, as Bill said, the bubble plan. This is the approved application plan, which functions as effectively as a master plan. And just to orient everyone, this is Route 29 here, and it had the framework for Lewis and Clark Drive from the very beginning coming out here to Airport Road. And in each of these blocks that have a number or a letter in them, those are the designated building envelopes or development areas. And we know you can't see it, but there was a chart down here that talks about what uses are permitted in each of those blocks. And there's some other notes and things like that that guide development. This plan is still in effect and is what the foundation and the county look to when they submit, for instance, site plan applications for new buildings or other uses in the park. This is the same plan, but a little bit updated. It's obviously reoriented. North is to the right. The top of the screen is west. As Bill indicated, back in 2005, the foundation submitted an application to add additional land to North Fork. It's this area, this rectangular area shown here. This area was already part of the park. So this was added to it, that in order to add land to the park, that land also had to be rezoned. And again, the zoning is Planned Development Industrial Park. We refer to it as PDIP. So that was submitted in 2005 and it was approved in 2010. And as Bill indicated, there's now a little bit more detailed application plan that governs this area, which we refer to as Block D, since that's how it was originally designated. But we wanted to kind of show the original framework, how it all fits together. And you can see some of the existing buildings that are here. There's actually now a building, Town Center 4, in this location. And then this is a copy of the land use matrix. Those are the uses that are allowed in each of the various blocks. And again, these are all light industrial, research and development, and office uses. No residential is allowed currently in the park. Wasn't really contemplated back in 1995 and 1996. This is the approved application plan for that area, Block D. Again, to orient you, this is Airport Road here, and this is now Lewis and Clark Drive. Some of you may know it was originally called Innovation Drive on this end, and this is the county's fire station here. This is the approved application plan that guides development of this area going forward, shows the building envelopes, the future parking deck, and obviously, sort of a road network. So then you may have some questions, sort of, what are we doing here? And I'm gonna let Deborah take over, Deborah Van Eersel take over from here. She has a particularly helpful perspective on why the foundation wants to amend the zoning for North Fork to allow residential. Deborah, I'll let you take over, and I'll just move the slides when you tell me to, or when it seems like it makes sense.
Sounds good. And good evening, everyone, and thank you for sitting through a beautiful evening, listening to us about our great project here. So as Valerie said, and before many of us were involved in this, the park was zoned in 1996. I think it took 3 zonings. And the idea was that this was a large assemblage of land and that it would be of benefit, not only to the university, but to the community as an economic development opportunity. In other words, trying to bring companies and industrial folks into the community or grow them from the community, connect them to the university, help to create jobs, and so on. So it's 562 acres. And from 1996 through to, very recently up to 2017, we were working off of generally the same master plan. And as you know, that growth has been going northward, but it's not been speeding northward, but it certainly has been moving up towards the airport. And economic development activities have not been that robust until the county put in place an economic development department. And once that happened, a vision for what could happen in the community and the county from an economic development standpoint started to come into clear focus. At about the same time, the university's Virginia Foundation's board put together a research parks committee and started looking at our original master plan and determined that it needed to be updated. So in 2016-17, we updated that master plan. We worked with an outside consultant who, a land planning and architecture firm, and they came down and they studied our community, sort of where we were in the marketplace. And we agreed that in order to make this work as an economic development tool for the community and for the betterment of the Commonwealth, we really needed to do a few things to make it, we'll call it, to activate it and to grow it. It's a beautiful setting. As everyone knows, most people like to be downtown. Our setting is very different from that, but there are certain things that we need to do in order to make it more conducive to bringing people to work out here as well. So people do like to work near where they live and vice versa. And so the several things that were recommended to us in the study were that we would amenitize the park. Thank you, Valerie, good intuition. That we would amenitize the park, meaning bringing more retail and more support entities into the park. Currently, we have Foods of All Nations North that runs a cafe. We have Success Studios, a fitness center. We have a meeting center. We have beautiful outdoor Wi-Fi enabled spaces. And so we continue to work on the amenitizing part of that. However, to support those amenities, you actually need people who live near and or will spend money on those service-oriented companies. We talked about creating connectivity and leveraging our open space. Some people worry that with this application, we won't have as much green and open space. You'll hear more about that in the presentation. We do think we'll have to be more dense, but we absolutely want to hold on to our green spaces. We believe that's a real differentiator for us in the development. To introduce a mix of uses, 24/7 activity, largely that speaks to all kinds of activities that could happen like they do in your neighborhood, but generally it requires some residential development. Widening our office spaces, types and configurations. Currently we have a lot of Class A office buildings, looking at different kinds of buildings and different kinds of materials. And back to open spaces and embracing healthy living. So many people now would want to be in healthy spaces, buildings that have plenty of light, spaces outdoors to work, clean buildings lead and sustainable buildings. So these were all the main points and emphasis of our new master plan. So if you move forward, I think there's a slide that shows well, our old master plan didn't quite look like this. This was one that was conceptualized. The buildings that are actually up are in this orange color. You can see the Town Center 4 at the time that this was done was under construction. It would be colored in all yellow. But we look at the potential for water features. We look at a lot of open space still, and it did contemplate to the south side, which you'll see in other diagrams, adding housing. And then always in this master plan, there was an opportunity to build a hotel and a conference center that would support industry that would come here, that would want to do conferencing and meeting with their companies and boards and so on. And here we show it out here at Airport Road, which is a more likely spot for that kind of development. We're very excited about this. We see this as an opportunity to really, again, activate North Fork as a larger industrial park, but also to accelerate that growth. We're seeing a lot of interest coming from the state and from the county wanting to grow companies, and we want to make this as accommodating and desirable place to do that in order to essentially deliver on our mission. I think that might, so again, back to the things we talked about. We think that bringing housing in makes it more vibrant. We talked about multifamily, townhomes, and single detached housing, to creating active, diverse communities. We've talked about affordable housing. You'll hear about that a little bit. We want to leverage our natural assets. You can't, downtown, you don't have the kinds of natural beauty that you have surrounding our building and in our trail system. So we do think that that is a differentiator, and many people want that. We absolutely want it to be walkable and bikeable. When we extended the Lewis and Clark Drive to meet up at Airport Road, we continued and extended that 8-foot bicycle path and or pedestrian path that comes up Berkmar. We're very anxious for the Berkmar extension to complete its connection to the research park so that you can drive all the way from North Fork all the way down to right across from Fashion Square Mall. So we're very excited about these things, and we do believe that this addition of residential will do exactly what we hope it will do. It will catapult us to a new level where we can continue to grow and create great jobs in our community.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Segueing into that, this is a copy of the proposed application plan that we have submitted to the county for review. Again, you saw some of these on Bill's screens and slides, but the overall purpose of the application is to amend an area of the park to allow, in addition to the planned development industrial park uses, to also allow residential in those blocks. And it's these 3 blocks here, D, F, and B. So in those 3 blocks, we're proposing to allow residential. But because the planned development industrial park zoning district does not allow residential, we are pursuing a rezoning of just those 3 blocks to the county's neighborhood model district zoning designation. And as Bill mentioned, that is the most flexible zoning district, and it's really the only one that specifically allows and encourages mixed use development. So we have the opportunity to kind of create our own zoning ordinance in effect. And so what we've done is essentially take all the same uses that are already permitted at North Fork, and they will continue to be permitted in these 3 blocks, but just also added residential to them. And then as you can see, all of the other areas in blue will continue to be zoned planned development industrial park. One thing I should mention, so I don't forget because it's important, is that with the, right now, following the 2010 approval of the addition to Block D, the total amount of square footage of planned development industrial park uses is 3.7 million square feet. And as part of this application, we would not reduce that figure at all. As Deborah indicated, the park would become more dense, but there is no backing away from the commitment of this area for not only an employment center for the county, but an economic development center, and just all around economic development and employment center for the community. So I know you probably can't see all the details, but we did just want to show you. On here, we have the land use matrix. It lists what uses are allowed in each block. We've gone ahead and specified that all uses would be allowed in each block to maximize the flexibility, so that if a particular, for example, economic development opportunity comes forward, that they can figure out which location, which block would be the most appropriate for that use.
I didn't catch that.
This is just a close-up of the same plan so that you all could see it a little bit better. And again, for orientation, this is Airport Road. This is Lewis and Clark Drive. As Deborah indicated, this was recently extended throughout the park. For a long time, there was a gap in between, but now thankfully the interconnection is there. That was constructed ahead of schedule. And so that really does provide wonderful interconnectivity already through the park. But these areas would be permitted again to have the same types of planned development industrial park uses as well as residential uses. Another element of the application we wanted to point out is that the foundation is proposing to officially add these 2 parcels that it has owned on Route 29 for quite a long time, rezone them to planned development industrial park as well. They have been part of the park somewhat unofficially, but they didn't have the same zoning. And so we thought this was a good opportunity to kind of address that issue and officially add them to the park and ensure that they had the same PDIP zoning as the other areas in blue. This is an illustrative plan. Again, you saw this with Bill's slides. This is an example of how the proposed application plan could be developed using the proposed code of development and the table of uses, and following along with the sort of major elements of this plan, such as maintaining obviously the Lewis and Clark Drive and how each of the various blocks might be developed. So for example, this is block B. You can see there's a sort of, again, this is just conceptual, one way that it might be built out. These are apartment buildings. You have some single family detached lots, and then you have some attached units over here and here. And similarly, we have some apartments here, a nice mixture of various housing types. And then we have some commercial buildings along here. There would probably be hopefully some ground floor retail if everything comes together well. Again, this is just conceptual, but it does show that there is still plenty of room, even with the addition of the residential uses, to have the 3.7 million square feet of planned development industrial park uses, which are shown in purple. So it might end up that you might have some of these areas here might end up with a research and development type use in this area and not residential. This is just one example of how it might be developed. And this is just a closer up view of that same area, so you can get a little bit better idea, again, of how this might conceptually come together and how it relates to, for example, the existing town center buildings and Lewis and Clark Drive. 2 other things I'll point out are the proposed future interconnections, which I know you all know is an important part of the comprehensive plan in the county. So we show that potential future connection there, and also here. This connection is shown on the Places29 master plan. This land here is zoned heavy industrial. And so to address and hopefully avoid any future issues between having heavy industrial here and residential here, we're proposing a 50-foot buffer would be maintained in this area as well, frankly, as over in this area. It's a little hard to see on this plan, but it's there. Well, this is a better view. This is why I put this in. You can see that buffer area much better here and get obviously a better feel for how this area might conceptually be developed. Again, this is the county's fire station. This is envisioned to be a hotel conference center here, a multifamily and a variety of single family units. This is a close-up of the application plan that would be binding. Again, sort of a bubble type plan that would form the basic framework of where the areas are developable. So in block B, for example, the sort of pale peach color are the areas that could be developed. The areas in green are largely some preserved steep slopes, some streams, and those areas would be maintained as green space, open space. And then here in block F, that's the area that would be developed. And we show a conceptual road network as well, just to demonstrate how the area might be built out. This is a green space plan. As Deborah indicated, a very important component of North Fork is the unique location with all of the green space, the natural areas, the water features. So they really want to maintain that and incorporate the development of North Fork really around all of those wonderful amenities. So we show how that area would be, those green spaces might, these would be preserved, and how each of the various blocks would have green space, interspersed throughout the development as recommended by the master plans and the neighborhood model district principles. There's also, we wanted to show that each of these blocks and residential areas would have access, close proximity to a trailhead, so they would be able to take advantage of those natural areas. Part of any neighborhood model district zoning, I mentioned earlier, you essentially have the opportunity to create your own mini zoning ordinance. And the term that's used is that it's called a code of development. So as part of our application, we have a very detailed couple of pages in our plan set that includes essentially the mini zoning ordinance in the code of development. We wanted to just share with you a list of those types of topics and issues that are covered in the code of development. So I won't go through all of this, but and we can certainly come back to it as needed. But just for clarification, probably the items you might be most interested in are the number of residential units that are proposed. We have a very wide range because we're not exactly sure how fast this will work, how much interest there will be. We think there will be quite a bit of interest, but we have specified that there would be at least 200 residential units and no more than 1,400. Those would be built out most likely over many years, but that would be the maximum that would be permitted. And as I noted earlier, they would retain the capacity or the ability to construct up to 3.7 million square feet of non-residential space. And again, that is the existing limit under the existing zoning. So we have things like height limitations for buildings. We have lists of all the permitted uses. And again, in the rezoned areas for neighborhood model district will be all those same PDIP uses plus the residential uses, and then things like hotel, retail space, office, to really try and make it a true mixed use community. We have lots of descriptions in the code on open space and amenities. Another important element that we want to point out is under the existing zoning, there is a requirement that at least 200 acres of North Fork remain as open space. And the good news is the foundation can continue to maintain that commitment even with the addition of the residential units in the neighborhood model district zoning areas. The foundation is also proposing to include affordable housing within the community. As many of you probably know, the county's current policy is for 15% of affordable housing. And so since there's no units here now, 15% of all the new units will meet the county's affordable housing requirements. There's also regulations about stormwater management, transportation and parking, and design standards. Another component of the application package is a set of revised proffers. The original ones were approved back in 1996. There's been a lot of changes in the county since then. So we've submitted additional ones that not only reflect more the current standards and expectations of proffers, but also address the current transportation issues from a recent traffic study that we had prepared as part of this application. Another element that's important as part of the transportation proffers is the original or existing proffers obligate the foundation to construct certain road improvements, and the thresholds for each of those improvements is based on the amount of square feet that is developed at North Fork. And that works well sometimes, but there are a lot of uses for which that doesn't really correlate. The size of the building doesn't correlate necessarily with the number of trips that it might generate. A typical example is an office building of 100,000 square feet would generate more trips, substantially more trips than, for instance, an equally sized data center, which would generate very, very few trips. So we've revised that to tie the road improvements in the proffers to the number of actual trips that are generated, which makes more sense, is more logical, and is the current standard for how that's handled. So quick summary, and then we'll wrap it up. Just to kind of tie it all together, all the things that comprise this application. Again, the first is that we're rezoning a portion of North Fork to the neighborhood model zoning district to allow those residential uses. We're adding the 2 parcels that the foundation owns right at Route 29 at the main entrance at Lewis and Clark Drive. Those would be added officially to the park and also rezoned to planned development industrial park. Amending the proffers to reflect these changes. And we're continuing to permit all of those PDIP uses will still be permitted in the neighborhood model district blocks as well as residential. Retaining the 3.7 million square feet of PDIP or non-residential uses, and then retaining 200 acres of open space. So I think that is all we have. Stop sharing. And we are obviously happy to answer any questions, and we can always pull any of those slides back up if that would be helpful. Thank you.
Chair Bill, would you mind if I ask a question?
I was going to ask if we could let Bea ask any questions first, because I've been informed she needs to leave early.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, just timing is good. They're not going to get here till 7:45, so I have more time. Thank you.
No, go ahead, Bea.
Now, Valerie, I missed out. How many units, residential units, are you planning on?
We have a range. It would be a minimum of 200 and a maximum of 1,400.
Okay, that's quite a range.
It is we acknowledge that, most certainly. We wanted, again, to provide flexibility to accommodate, the market demand and interest, but also, it's a new thing for North Fork. So
Right.
We think there'll be a lot of interest, but anyway, so that's the range.
And there will be an area for in the future for transit.
Yes, absolutely. The foundation has been working with transit, and Deborah may be the best person to elaborate more on this, but absolutely transit is an important component at North Fork. And we hope, among other things, in terms of benefits, that having residential uses at North Fork will only enhance the opportunities for transit there in the future.
Okay, and if, Bill, if I may ask another favor, I know that Supervisor Ned Galloway also has another meeting to attend. Maybe it would be all right with the others if he could ask any questions he has, since this is in his district.
Okay, that's good. Ned?
I appreciate that.
Valerie, single family detached was part of this. I did not catch where that was, maybe in your illustrative model, where that might be.
Let me show you. I will share my screen briefly. Yeah, we'll get the right one here.
While she's pulling that up, I'd like to point out something, that one of the things that's also proposed with this is the ability to do carriage units. And we're trying to figure out how to account for that. It doesn't count against, we've done carriage units before in other developments, and it doesn't count towards the total number of dwelling units, but obviously it could have potential impacts. So we're trying to figure that out and making sure that it's accounted for in the traffic study also. So I wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Would you define a carriage unit, please?
They have carriage unit defined, and I can't remember the sizes, so I don't want to quote that, but basically typically what it is it would be an accessory building, maybe over a garage or another building on the property that's associated with the primary dwelling, and it's limited in size. So it doesn't have it's not the same size. So we typically don't see the exact same impacts, but we do see some more impacts. So I just wanted to point that out, and we're trying to figure out how to account for that.
Right. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, Supervisor Lepisto Curley, they're often, as Bill said, above a detached or even an attached garage, usually very small 1-bedroom or units, or sometimes a studio unit. And hopefully you all can see my screen now. Supervisor Galloway, this is one area on the illustrative plan that single family detached units are proposed. I think on this concept, that's the only area. Obviously those, in thinking about the density and the appropriate amount of space for each type of unit and maximizing the space and being efficient, most likely the number of detached units will be on the smaller side, but we do accommodate the option. So if there is an interest and a desire from the market, we can add them.
Thank you for that. And then you mentioned the 15% affordable housing. Is this going after our old policy or the new housing Albemarle policy?
Well, we are, what we proposed is under the policy that's in effect right now. I know, working on the new incentives package with your housing director, Ms. Pethia, but right now the proposal is for 15% to be affordable to those making up to 80% of the area median income. The folks at the foundation may have more to add on that if needed. They've been working closely with the university on those initiatives.
I'll reserve my comments for that until a later date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Can we, I wanted to turn it over to the CAC members. They both had questions. So if you can, Carol, if you can get to Tony or Sue.
Go ahead, Tony.
Go ahead and talk. Tony can go first.
Oh, ladies first.
Hey, Sue, go right ahead.
Sure. Does this affordable housing component fulfill the university's commitment of the 3 areas for affordable housing, or is that offer in another part of North Fork?
I'm happy to pitch in and answer that. If I could just quickly disclose the fact that I was recently appointed as a planning commissioner, but I'm currently serving in the role of applicant on this call, not as a planning commissioner. So I also want to say thank you to everybody for spending the time together and for learning more about our application. I am one of the co-project managers with Pace Lochte at the university on the affordable housing initiative that the university is promoting. And as you pointed out, there are 3 sites that the university has offered as potential sites for affordable housing to help fulfill the president's commitment of 1,000 to 1,500 units phased in over a 10-year period. This is one of the three sites. It's Piedmont, 10th and Wurtland, and North Fork. That said, we have really no idea yet as to what type of affordability or number of homes will be placed in any of those three areas, because that will be up to a developer who we will partner with as a third party. So that is to be determined. But I will say that the vision is that this is mixed income and not entitled, or not entirely affordable housing. That would not be the likely scenario. Hopefully I answered your question.
A little.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the affordable housing offer from the university will be in this area. It won't be somewhere else in North Fork.
No, correct. This would be the only area that would allow for the residential piece. Correct. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. And you mentioned on the trips versus the square footage in terms of the revised proffers for transportation. What if the use of a building changed? Well, I mean, what if a building was built as a data science building and therefore it had fewer trips and therefore it generated less transportation proffers? But 15 years from now, that building was used for something else, which then generated many more trips.
We would, as zoning clearances come through, we would be evaluating that. We've had this kind of scenario before.
Okay.
So we have experience with it, with administering it.
Okay.
Okay,
Tony,
Thank you.
okay, Tony?
I don't know who to direct this question to, but at North Fork, is there a payment in lieu of taxes? How does that work? Or are taxes paid, or is there a payment in lieu of taxes, or there is no compensation to the county?
I think I can take a stab at that. And so the University of Virginia Foundation is a taxpayer, on a real estate taxpayer. So the only time we don't pay real estate taxes is when the University of Virginia itself occupies a portion or the entirety of a building in the park.
I see. So these units, these whatever commercial or residential, unless, let me get this, unless the University of Virginia uses it, then they're assessed at whatever the tax rate is, or
That's currently the situation. That's absolutely correct. The foundation owns all of the buildings currently, all the land and all the buildings currently in the park. It's not yet determined how what the ownership structure would be for the residential. But if we owned them, again, we would, under the same circumstances, pay real estate taxes.
so let me ask you this as a follow-up. The hotel complex that, you know, is at the southernmost portion, does the University of Virginia, would the University of Virginia own that land or own that property, that conference center and hotel?
That's yet to be determined.
So there could be a hotel there that is owned by the University of Virginia and not pay taxes, or a pilot.
I believe we pay taxes for the hotels that we own currently. Boar's Head Resort is a good example. We own that, but we pay taxes there.
Is that a voluntary payment, or is it, you know, that, you know, it's on the tax rolls and the university pays
It's
for
on the tax rolls, sir.
it? I see.
Yeah.
Is it a voluntary payment?
I don't know quite how to answer that. I don't think it's voluntary. I think it's part of our agreement with the county and the city. from way
Ms.
back.
Long, would you know the answer to that question?
I believe that they are not, that the foundation doesn't qualify under state law for an exemption. I'm not 100% certain of that. I believe that's the case, but at a minimum, I was just pulling up the GIS and assessor records while you all were discussing it, and they certainly show up as taxable entities, and they do pay taxes. And as Deborah mentioned, the Boar's Head Resort, which is also owned by the foundation, certainly pays taxes as well.
And we don't, it's not a voluntary payment. It is, we pay taxes and it is not voluntary.
I see. Thank you very much.
Virginia, did you have anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody's asked my questions.
Okay, Bill, I always have a bunch of questions. Sorry about that. In general, the first question I have is, are there any plans or consideration to address sustainability in, I suppose, in these parcels and in the North Fork as a whole? I know the county is extremely interested in, its revised comprehensive plan of emphasizing sustainability. I mean, solar or reuse or anything to that effect. That may be a premature question, so just something to consider. Unless
There's
you
not
have
a lot
any.
of, there's not a lot of reuse opportunity. It's primarily a greenfield project, so there's not a lot of there. And the answer to your other question is no, there is nothing in the actual review that addresses that.
Okay.
Could I mention one? Sorry, could I mention one thing just to give you a little bit of color around sustainability? So we've been taking sustainability incredibly seriously, and we will continue to. Town Center 4 and Town Center 3, the two most recent buildings out there, are both LEED Gold. And so that's definitely an initiative that we're continuing to pursue. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. Okay, the second one is, it's a very attractive concept to build housing close to where people are working, to the workplaces. And I realize there's no way we can compel, force that to happen in terms of having a majority of the people in these residences work in the research park or close by. But I'm wondering if there's some way we could, or if we think about some ways we could encourage that in terms of maybe financing or, making these available to people that work in or around the park before they go on the open market, something to that effect. And I'm just putting the idea out that maybe we should be thinking about that sort of thing if we really want to have people living close to where they work. No, nothing's like that's been done before, but maybe we could consider something to encourage that to happen, since that seems to be part of the plan and one of the most desirable aspects of this development. Something I just noticed on the diagram, there's a parcel F2 that's designated as a park. And I was wondering if there was any possibility of moving that or switching it so that that park would be closer to the residential areas. I can't tell from the maps how far away that park is from the residential areas, but I don't know if that's a possibility, if anyone could look into that. The other thing that occurred to me is, I know you've got quite a range of housing that you plan to put in there. I think you said from 400 to, minimum and maximum. But I'm wondering if, when you implement this, if this residential area really becomes a great success, if there's any possibility of expanding it at all, if that's any consideration whatsoever. And I realize that would be down the road, but if it really works out for the county and for the foundation, is there any possibility of perhaps coming back and asking for some of the other PDIP zones to be rezoned?
Subsequent rezonings are always an option. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here is where this is a subsequent rezoning of a prior rezoning.
Okay. With regard to the housing and the affordable housing, the question I had in terms of was, it seemed like in the narrative that we were talking about very small, single-family homes and or townhouses and other types of, shared wall homes. And I'm not concerned exactly, but I'm wondering if we've got enough diversity of housing pricing built in so that we really do have a neighborhood that is income diverse. In other words, maybe some, how did I put this? And also, I would want to see in future plans that there would be enough modestly priced homes that people could buy as entry-level homes to build equity in. So I guess I'm looking at this from a diversity standpoint that maybe we need some, maybe homes that would be attractive to upper middle to higher income families, and also the entry-level home buying opportunity, so that we would really have a diverse income neighborhood rather than a neighborhood that was skewed one way or the other. I know there are no answers to these questions at this time. It's just, these are just, things that occurred to me as I was going through the narrative. The other simple question, on page 10, in the relegated parking section, it refers to podium structured parking. I'm not sure what that means.
I had the same question.
Does anybody have an answer there?
I can share, and Fred may have an even better description, but it's essentially a form of structured parking, usually above ground. The first, maybe one level may be below ground, but usually it's the first, maybe second levels are above ground, and then with of non-parking uses above them, whether it's residential or office or R&D, something like that.
Okay, the last, let me see, in the school section of the narrative, basically pages 12 to 14, I know that in the narrative you gave us tonight, you had a wide range of potential units, but in the chart on page 14, it uses the figure of 835 total units. I don't know, is that still applicable? I mean, that's a lot different than 200, I think.
That is, first, that's just a sort of hypothetical way that sort of a possible mixture of the types of uses, or excuse me, types of residential. So it contemplates if there were a total of 1,400 uses or units, that approximately 835 of them might be apartments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1,400. So this is based on the total possible.
Exactly.
Okay, not necessarily what's going to happen over the next whatever 4 to 5 years. I don't know what the time range is.
Exactly.
And in relation to schools, I mean, the 787 students projected for Baker Butler Elementary. I mean, 787 students is actually a pretty good sized elementary school in and of itself. I mean, so that's really not I don't know that how the county is going to deal with that in terms of, we've already, I think, approved one additional elementary school, but if you're talking 787 students, that's an elementary school unto itself, and maybe more than one elementary school.
I know, Bill may want to address this question directly, but I know the county school division has a long-range planning committee that looks at these issues, and they've recently released some reports and recommendations for moving forward. And they do have, as you indicated, there are 2 proffered elementary school sites in the immediate area. One is directly on the opposite side of 29 in the North Point development, and then a second at the Brook Hill development. So don't know what will happen with that, but certainly I think the county is looking at those long-range planning issues to ensure there is sufficient capacity. Bill, or
Yeah, one of my concerns was that, if that's the plan, of North Point and Brook Hill, then every student in that development will need to be bused. And I'm thinking they would have to be bused using Route 29. And I don't know that that's a good outcome necessarily, Okay. I've had a few more. You don't really have any. You did include some retail in your overall plan. So there is plan to include retail very close to the residential areas, right? And another quick one. There was a mention of extending the bicycle paths to the town center. Is that the Hollymead Town Center that you're planning to extend the bike paths to, or?
No, what I was referring to, Bill, was the fact that when we extended Lewis and Clark Drive, we extended the same bike path, in that case, I think it's 10 foot, but in the park, I think it's 8 feet, all the way along Lewis and Clark Drive, and which meets up to a path that was originally part of Lewis and Clark Drive, the original portion. So our point there being is we want to continue to encourage bikeability and walkability into the park. And the town center, I meant the Hollymead Town Center, Berkmar Drive piece connecting to Lewis and Clark into our park.
Okay, so that would essentially create a bike path from North Fork to Hollymead Town Center.
Absolutely.
Not all yours, but yeah.
We're very excited about that connection.
And when you there was a mention of possibly including data center in the rezoning for the PDIP, and I'm wondering if, or I think maybe we should consider, sometimes these data centers, if they're very large, they use a lot of water and a lot of electricity, and I feel like that we might want to consider that as a separate issue rather than lumping it in with the PDIP zoning. That can create, if they're very large, it can create quite a drain on the electric grid and on the water usage. So it's just something that we need to think about when we talk about data centers. That's all I have. And Bill, I'll write these up and send them on to you. Maybe we could have to think about in the future.
Sure, anyone can send me comments and I'll share them with the applicant. So bfritz@albemarle.org. I'll keep sharing it.
All right, we have somebody from the public that would like to speak or ask a question. Chris McLean, please unmute yourself and you could ask your question.
Thank you. And maybe this is a question for Valerie. Hi, Valerie, first of all. Thanks for presenting. The question I have is, you mentioned it's 200 acres was part of the original zoning for open space, and that UVA is still honoring that with this, but is the definition of open space changing, and like, is it more fractional with the new plan, or is it still big chunks of open space that's anticipated with this new zoning request?
Well, I can say it's, first of all, they had lots more than 200 acres in the original approved plan. That was always a minimum that had to be maintained. So even with adding the additional residential, there's still plenty of room to accommodate the 200 acres of open space. And I'd say for the most part, it's really a little of both. In the application plan, again, the portion that's the PDIP, that's not really changing. those areas that aren't in the blue development envelopes will continue to be the open space. But then also in the new neighborhood model district area blocks, lots of that area is development area, but a lot of it is shown as having open space within those residential areas. And as part of the code of development, there's even standards listed for how much, you know, amenity space has to be in each of those residential blocks to ensure maybe what you're kind of getting at, that there's a, you know, open space near, you know, relatively near everybody's home, but then there's also larger, more communal open spaces that will be throughout the park.
Great. And if I'm still unmuted,
Sure.
a follow-up or second question is, it's my understanding that, and I guess important because I saw this 3 summers ago, I believe, where the Rivanna and Jacobs Creek were significantly out of their banks on several occasions. The 1-lane bridge over the Rivanna on Dickerson Road was replaced recently, and the water was over that bridge and certainly over the Jacob Creek Bridge, both 1 lanes. It looks like the map that was presented shows playing fields and structures on that floodplain area. Basically, the why that the confluence of those two create. And the question is, it's my understanding that in the original proffers that no structures were going to be allowed on that land, and just want to hear UVA's response to honoring that commitment to basically leaving that area as open space.
Fred or Deborah, you all want to take that, or you want me to? I can note one thing, Chris, that the original or in the existing application plan from 1996 that continues to apply to that area is shown as an open space, not a, you know, no buildings or development there, but that does still allow open space uses like recreational fields.
Sure, but that if there are no structures, then it's no poles, no lights, no restrooms that are actual structures.
I don't know specifically on that issue. We'd have to probably look at it. You know, I don't know that anybody's thought that far ahead, but lights in the area might, you know, small limited disturbances like that might be permitted as essentially an accessory use of a soccer field or a ball field. Likewise, a small restroom, for example.
Yeah, the flood hazard overlay district has very specific regulations about what can and cannot be built, and if anything can be built, how it is built. And then there's also the stream buffer regulations that kick in for mitigation and staying away from the stream. So those things combined. So there have been cases where we've seen play fields built in floodplains, but all the support facilities, parking, buildings, everything else is located outside of the floodplain, adjacent, but outside of the floodplain. So, and that gets pretty complicated to do, but that's where they, when I was showing you the process where you have the legislative review at the far left there, which is conceptual going all the way forward to this very detailed plans where we'd get specific engineering plans that showed what the elevations were, what's being proposed, how it's being proposed, so that we can analyze that. And we're simply not at that point yet. Hope that's helpful.
That is, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
I don't have anybody else from the public with their hand raised at this time. So Sue, go ahead.
If there are no more questions before we reach our end point, what happens next? What is the timeline next?
That's really good. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to be giving the applicant some comments. We've already had some sort of informal conversations to go over the application, make sure I understand what they were doing. Like I had the same question about Podium, and Valerie fortunately jumped in and answered it before my memory could remember. But I had those kind of questions where we've come, what do you mean by? Or we've had some questions like, the coloring on this page is a little hard to read. Maybe we should use some different shading. So we've had those kind of conversations to make sure we understand what the application is, and to try to start thinking about some of the other impacts. Some other departments and agencies have provided comments. We're going to make sure we get all those to the applicant. I think I've given the applicant all of those except for comments from the Parks and Recs people, which we received earlier, and I don't think I've forwarded those to them, but I've had them for like a couple days. So we're going to package that all together. I'll be analyzing all those comments to make sure. Sometimes you have one agency saying there absolutely positively should not be anything here, and another one said there absolutely positively should be something here. So we have to reconcile those. That hasn't happened on this project, but need to make sure. So I'll be going through all that, getting the applicant those comments. The applicant's going to make some revisions to the plan to address these comments that we have. They'll look at options. They'll look at the things that are based on the conversations that we've had tonight, and anything else that might come in. And then ultimately what will happen is we'll get to a point where we go, yes, we're ready for a public hearing, and we will schedule a public hearing with the Planning Commission. As part of that, there'll be a staff report that is prepared, and that will be presented to the Planning Commission. It's available about a week prior to the Planning Commission meeting. And that will contain our findings and the applicant's information, and that will go to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission holds a public hearing. Following that, we move on to the Board of Supervisors. Sometimes there are revisions made between the Planning Commission and board meetings. Sometimes there aren't. It all depends on how that meeting goes. Those dates have not been set yet, so I can't give you timeframes for those.
I do have one more person.
Tony? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tony. After Tony.
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, you had your hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a final question I have with regard to the range of planned residential units, that pretty wide range. Is it customary to approve a rezoning application with such a wide range of potential units? I'm not, it seems like in the
Yes.
previous ones we've done, they were a lot more specific about how many units they plan to build.
Actually, this one has a smaller range than most, because most rezonings that have a residential component to it will say we'll have not more than this number of residential units, with the lower end being 0. So this one actually has a floor to it, whereas most don't have a floor to it. Okay. So yeah, the fact that there's a range, it's only a range because the applicant said, yep, we're going to do at least 200. Most times the applicant doesn't say, the applicant doesn't commit to doing any minimum number.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I was more concerned about the maximum. Anyway. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There was a comment earlier about hopefully in the future, there would be a connection to Berkmar. And I was wondering if someone could pull up a map and show where the connection, where the Berkmar extension would connect to the university property.
I don't have any maps handy that I could do that. If you email me, I can get you some information.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Just generally speaking, the Berkmar Drive extension that comes from in town ends at the Staybridge Hotel in Hollymead Town Center.
Right.
And it is, there is an alignment at the county for that to connect from there to the entrance at Lewis and Clark Drive, which is an entrance off of Airport Road into North Fork. So it would go, it would extend to Airport Road to a traffic circle, which is on the diagrams that were shown in our package.
Right.
And it would lead you then to the Hollymead Fire Station. That same road takes you to the Hollymead Fire Station. That road, I believe, is slated to be completed in 2024-25, and the county's already working on that road extension.
I have one more question from the public.
Okay.
I have two. Go ahead, Chris, unmute yourself. You can ask your question.
I think I raised my hand too fast. I think Deborah answered it by saying that the county is already working on that extension or the connection, and county controls that land, or VDOT does.
I just can't remember the details, and I didn't want to misspeak. So I'd rather, if anyone emails me and says, hey, can you provide me that? I'm going to get with our traffic planner, Kevin McDermott. I know he has this information and can just provide it. I just don't have it handy.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay.
And that is it.
Okay, if there are no more questions, the CAC's next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, March 10th at 6:30 p.m. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with Ordinance 20-A16 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. So if there's no objections, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:58 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Good
your
night.
time.